Tim, what is it about these bugs in a box?
There's no way to shrink it down. There's no words that can describe it. They bring a healing. You either know or you have to know. The smell of a healthy hive, once you smell it, you'll never forget it. But just the ability to get up, take your health in your own hands. See, that's what we have to do. The desire to work these bees and the healing you get from it. It's something about a box full of bugs, you know what I'm saying? It's got a healing to it.
Mike, what is it about those bugs in a box?
Wow, those bugs in a box. There's something about them. It's an insect that can do so much, so many functions it has, so many things it has within itself, and we get to manipulate it. God allowed us to manipulate His creation and do the things we can do. We can make products from it, and it's just exciting to sit there and be able to propagate them and manipulate them and watch them do their thing and explode on you and watch the direct results of what you do. To me, it's nothing like it. It's like almost an addiction when you get to do this and you have this ability given to you to do this. So to me, that's what they are. They're just amazing, amazing insects.
Randy, what is it about those bugs in a box?
There's just something magical about those bugs in a box. I don't know a whole lot of beekeepers that don't have a watching chair or some way to sit out and just watch their bees. You just watch them work. It's just something, it's like watching a campfire. It's like sitting around at midnight watching a campfire. You're out there by yourself and it's quiet. But I do the same thing with my bees. They don't know all there is to know. I'll never know all there is to know, but there's so much to learn. It's all so interesting, and it brings together a community, whether in the way we're doing it with YouTube and with other things. It brings together a community of like-minded people that are, we're all a little off, kind of. It's relaxing, it's fun, and I'll be doing it from now on, just like you, I'm sure.
Bruce, what is it about those bugs in a box?
Man, I don't know. It's addictive from the day I first opened one up. It's therapeutic to me. It's always an adventure and I just never know what to expect, and it's just very miraculous to me how they do what they do, and I don't know what it is. It's just something, there's an it about it that is just addicting, that I just love. And I guess it's a way to interact fully with nature, and it's like opening a gift. Every time you open one, you never know what you're going to expect. It's a surprise, and so many things to learn, so many things to do, and so many things you can do with it, and I just love it. If you ever doubt that there's a God, just open a beehive and look at the bees, because there's just no way that just happened randomly. There's definitely something divine about that, and I just love it.
What is it about these bugs in a box that keeps us coming back, that keeps us working them in the rain, traveling across the country?
In the heat?
And the heat, the snow, the rain.
Snow?
The snow. That's a long story, right, Tim? Oh. There is just something about the bees, and I think the bees are just the conduit to people. Bees are a conduit to a connection that's way greater than ourselves. We can't fully understand what it is, but we're drawn to it. As we've heard folks talk about, there's a healing with the bees, mental, physical, spiritual. It ties people together, makes those connections, it brings us all together, it fulfills a part of us, that the result of engaging with the bees, the result of that action, the consequence of that action is joy and happiness. What is it exactly about those bees? I don't think I'll ever know, but I think I'll spend all my days trying to find out.
Hey guys.
Hey,
Greg, are you there, man?
Man, it's good seeing you guys.
uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Like now, just bear with me.
Yeah. I'm gonna crack open my Reed's real ginger ale. I think we're gonna Bruce, the show's gonna be on us tonight.
Greg, you're kind of lagging there,
will
buddy. I got you there. We heard you there pretty good. Maybe
go.
it'll stick. Maybe it'll catch up.
Doesn't stick. I'll try to turn the camera off. It's there's anyway. It's just a black screen. But anyways, what are you guys up to? How you guys doing?
We're doing good. Brian is still in a hotel room there. He's in another one. He was telling me what a wonderful spot it is before we got on.
Oh, it's
And that looks like is that an extended
stay?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's got the stove and the fridge, and but it was it was lacking some things when I got here. So, and I've been fighting with them all week, but that's another story for another time. So, but yeah. Uh-oh. What's happening here? Uh-oh. Bruce, you're muted.
Okay, we've done this like all year. We're having a fun time here, everybody. Sorry about this. So Greg is he's having some internet issues. Hopefully he can hop back on here and jump into this thing and be able to have his internet catch up for him. But Brian, what's going on with you, man? Besides being out of town.
I'm looking forward to getting home. So it's been a long month, just looking forward to getting home and digging into the colonies. So I was nervous, threw the supers on, but I mean, everybody saw how the colonies were doing, but just get you nervous when you're away from them,
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm hopefully going to dig into the colonies. Well, I probably won't go down into the brood nest. I'll probably just check the supers. But I'm either going to do that Friday or on Sunday. So
yeah,
either day. So,
well, hey, Tim and Ed, thanks for the super chat, super stickers there.
Yeah, thank you.
Helps out a lot, guys.
Look at Greg. It's like we get a poster of him. Look at that.
I know.
Look at that. He's here in spirit. He is here in spirit.
I got eye blink there.
What's going on down your way? There he goes. Look at him. It's like he glitched into the Matrix.
Down here, he's like getting frustrated, I bet. Down here in Alabama, we're just kind of in a holding pattern right now. The bees are, cotton's blooming. It's probably starting to be on the tail end of the cotton, although it's still blooming. And, as they plant the fields at various times, some of it blooms earlier than others. And that's going on. We've maybe got, looks like the goldenrod down here is just turning that, kind of a cream color, light colored, just about to pop. It hasn't popped yet, but it's about to.
Okay.
Some sort of a flow coming in. The bees seem really happy pretty much right now in certain areas. This is not my favorite time of the year. Some people love this time of the year because down here, if you got your ducks in a row, you can do some splits this time of the year because it's a fall flow coming in and it's really a good time. But I'm still trying to catch up, trying to get some dead outs cleaned up. Not that I've had a lot of dead outs just lately. I've had a few, but I just haven't had a chance to get them cleaned up. So I've been having some wax moth damage, having to clean those up, and
Oh,
man,
wow.
it's just been crazy. We did have today was beautiful. We didn't have, it was low humidity. It was a little warm, but it wasn't super hot, but it was just a little, humidity is so much better today. So I got
Good.
off work this afternoon, and man, it was just, this morning was a little chilly outside. You know, there's a chill in the air. It wasn't cold, but a chill in the air. And this afternoon it was hot outside, but there was very little humidity. So yeah, Mike Berry says I do nothing this time of the year, and that's, you know, I'm just trying to clean up the messes that I've got and kind of get reorganized, and just kind of peeking in on them, just checking on them, cleaning up dead outs. You know, maybe going to do another mite treatment. I'm thinking about possibly doing Apigard here in a few weeks, just to keep the mites down. Although my mites levels have been pretty good for the most part. I did have one yard that they were a little high on, but you know, the ones I've checked have overall been pretty good. And yeah, Lisa says 57 degrees this morning, and that it was very nice outside this morning. That's perfect. And so not a lot going on with the bees, except for they're just busy and they seem pretty happy, and haven't been up to Ozark in a couple of weeks, and just kind of letting them roll on, do their thing, like Mike says, kind of let them do their thing. And you know, in the future, if I do try to get, you know, grow or get bigger, this would be a great time of the year to split, because if you get a nice queen in a colony this time of the year, get her established before it gets cold. This is down here now. I'm not sure about other parts of the country, but they'll rock into spring and just absolutely kill it in the spring. And so it just depends on what you want to do. Just winter prep, like the theme of this video is, you know, winter prep. That's kind of what we're doing, just kind of in a holding pattern right now.
Yeah. You know, it's funny how the different areas of the country, and context is key. You know, we always say that. It's funny how you say, you know, you could make your splits down there, you know, because of the flow that comes in. If we, in Northeast Ohio, if we made splits at this point, I mean, you're basically just saying, okay, here you go. I'm going to sacrifice those.
Well, you have to have
You know,
if you had
right now
if you had a super strong boiling double deep, then you put a mated queen in there that was a good queen, you could probably pull it off. But just try and get a 2 or 3 frame split and have them grow, you're probably
wouldn't be
right.
able to. Yeah.
But I imagine you could do it with a really super strong, crazy colony, maybe of Italians that stays strong or whatever, because you guys have a fall flow too coming in, don't you?
We do, and I'll see when I go home how strong it is, but I've already seen, like Mike Berry said, my never-ending honey harvest for the year. I have supers that are filled up again. So I've got 2 of my 11 colonies that have 3 supers on them. So, you know, and I was just sitting the other day thinking about it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, even if half of, I think it's like 22 supers I have out. Like, even if half of those get filled up, what am I going to do with, you know,
that is a challenge. I mean, right now, you know, I had a really nice harvest, and I've sold it quite a bit of it, but the sales have really slowed down. I don't know if it's because everybody's harvesting right now, but man, I'm not in panic mode, but I'm like, man, I got to get rid of some of this honey. So if any of you guys out there that don't live locally would like me to mail you some honey, just go on the website, brucesbees.com, and get you some. I'd appreciate it. But I'm, you know, if it's something you want, don't do it just for me, but if it's something you really would like to try, I have people occasionally say, hey, will you ship honey? Or I'd love to try some of that South Alabama honey or whatever. If you're some of those people, get on there and check it out, brucesbees.com. Hey, just an update, everybody. If you're wondering where Greg is, it's on his channel, but he checked in earlier. If you're just hopping on here, and he is having some pretty serious issues with his internet tonight, and so we're planning on him hopping on here. I'm sure he's trying right now, trying to get on, but he's just, you know, just buffering, and he can't seem to hop on. So we're gonna go ahead and roll with it, and hopefully he can get on here pretty soon.
Yeah, we're rolling with it. So, man, I tell you, you missed a good time last week.
Yeah, tell us about that, bro. I'm sure Greg will, if Greg can get on here, hopefully he can add to it. But tell us kind of about your experience over there. Tell us what happened and who all showed up, and just kind of give us a rundown. I watched your video. It looks like it was a great time, and I wish I could have been there.
you know, it all kind of started just because, you know, I was talking and I was letting people know, hey, where I'm going to be at with work and things like that. And I got, connected up with Jason, Bohemia Bees, and let's see what Greg says. Going to restart. All right, so that should hopefully fix it. But yeah, I got connected with Bohemia Bees there, Jason, and the word got out on some live streams. I probably slipped up and told people that I was going over there, and it just kind of spread out a little bit. And he set up with a good friend of his, Gunner, to cook up some barbecue. Had some brisket and pulled pork and some good eating. Um, we had Rob from Laura Bees there. Ricky and his wife showed up and they delivered a horizontal hive. I got to see the horizontal hive that they did for Justin Ruger, accessible beekeeping. We had Galloway Lights. Frank was there. We had Sawmill Charlie was there. Um, Hickory Hives. Jason was there. Uh, as I'm walking down the drive and I'm standing there next to Charlie, and we're going to walk back by Jason's barn and just go back by some of his hives. I see this white truck pull in.
Oh gosh, there it
There's
was.
and there's Greg pulling in that I had no clue. They kept it under wraps, and I looked and I'm like, "What are you doing here?" You know? And he
Man, that's cool.
literally, yeah, he literally hopped in his car early in the morning and drove down there and got there shortly after, I got there. But Jason was, he was so awesome. He basically opened up his place. He took us through, his barn, his complete shop, his setup there. Showed us all of his different hives. He's got that, gosh, and I forget the name of the colony keeper hive. It's that one that looks like a rocket that's kind of
Yeah.
slanted. Um, eh, just he had so many different ones. He had a horizontal hive. He's got the different nukes, and just took us through everything. He had one cutout that he couldn't get him out of the log, and he stacked the log up in his yard, and he put Langstroth boxes around it, and it's just still there. He's got to eventually get it out of there because you've got to be able to remove the frames and all that stuff. But just he took us through, and we went around and we looked and we all talked, and then we had a good meal and did some honey tastings, and it was just a great day. Being on the road and having the opportunity to connect with. I think in total we had 10 people there, 10, 11 people there. It was awesome. So
Sounds like a good time. And you guys even FaceTimed me and or Jason did there for a little while. I was at work.
yeah,
What was it? This was Friday, right? And I
yeah,
just was able to
yeah,
peek in, check in for a little while. Looks like a good time. Mike on here said next year we'll have to carpool up and maybe we can do that if you guys do it again. So I want to get
well,
up there. I really do. I need to just show up one of these times and surprise everybody.
yeah.
That'd be kind of fun.
I won't speak for Jason, but I do know he kept it at the number of people just because he
Sure.
wanted to just see how things
Oh
went,
yeah.
what it takes to get,
Yeah, I
to
would
get
never show up without letting him know. That wouldn't be
but
surprise, Jason. I'm here. But
right.
yeah,
He
that's
wouldn't care. Yeah, he wouldn't care.
yeah.
But he just wanted to see how things went. And I mean, everything just turned out fantastic. I mean, I don't think there were any issues. It just, everybody had such a good time. His wife, was just like, please t- talk to him anytime about bees,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, it was so awesome of him to open up his house and host everyone. So,
Yeah.
yeah, next
Cool stuff.
year, um, look for another BBQ next year. I'm about positive that he's going to put together another one. I don't know what size he's going to keep it, but next year, we'll see what's going on. So Might be a late summer kind of, you know, beekeeping get together. Who knows?
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jason's a real advocate for the profession. Specifically, he's just open-minded. I like that as far as like all the different things he's trying, all the, the store that he has, all the stuff that he sells and shares with people. And if you ever want to watch a channel that just really explains things, top to bottom, inside and out, and the reasoning behind why he does things, that's
Really?
he's so good at that. He really does a great job of explaining honeybee physiology, honeybee,
Yeah.
just everything. Like
Yep.
this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it. And he really takes a lot of time, I think, preparing those videos as far as what he wants to talk about, and then he goes right through every single step. And so in a lot of ways, obviously, once again, Greg always says context is key, and that's a term we've kind of picked up in these chats. But of course, if you live in Alaska, it's different than if you live in Central America, or in Florida or in Missouri. So you got to take all that with a grain of salt. But basic bee biology and basic different types of equipment, and basic methods of working bees. Jason's really good at explaining that and puts a lot of time and effort into that. So if you have not checked out Bohemia Bees, that's Jason is who we're talking about. He's the guy that has that channel, and he does a great job with it. And he's been on here as a guest a few times. He's just a good guy. And I didn't meet him until, to be honest, I didn't even know who Jason was until last year. May have been about this time of the year, I'm not sure, when he put a video out where he invited several well-named YouTube beekeepers to come on, and I can't remember what the topic was. It's like, basically, if you have one bit of advice or something, like, what would you give? And so he had a lot of really folks that you'll recognize on there, and did a great job. That's the first time I ever saw him and knew who he was. And then I met him at the Hive Life, and he's become a pretty good friend since then. And so, good dude, trying to really move beekeeping forward, just in his own way, kind of like Greg and Brian, and we're all trying to do, and so many of us out there. So, but yeah, I look at his stuff, and I look at you, Brian, and even Greg, and you guys all look so organized. You have everything all just perfectly placed. Your hives look beautiful, in good condition. And I walk into my bee yard, and I've got 5-frame NUCS, and I've got 3 deep 10-frame boxes, and I've got stuff stacked up, and I've got dead outs turned sideways on my pallets, and I go to my bee barn, and where I keep my stuff in my bay there, and stuff just sitting around, and I just look so, I've got to get more organized somehow with it. And that's been so frustrating for me this year. I've had a hard time for some reason staying on top of just the organization of my stuff. It's like, I like to at least look organized in there, and it's just not right now. So the bees themselves are doing pretty good overall. I have lost a few in July and August, but not as many as I lost last year. And that's just something that happens down here for some reason. And to be honest, and we discussed this maybe a little bit last week, my pollination bees are struggling more than the ones that stayed back, my production bees. And I don't know what the reasoning is. If it's a combination of average age of my production bees is younger, or if it's just that I brought a bunch of mites back with me from California, or just, I don't really know what the cause is. And last year, for those who may not have been on here, or last week, for those who may not have been on here, I brought, if you look back at my videos from back in the spring, I sent 48 colonies out to California, brought them back, split them immediately. I treated them a lot for mites through the winter. I think they left here pretty clean. When they got back, I did not treat for mites. I should have. That was my big mistake, I think. And split them, set them out there. They made a bunch of honey for me. The donor colonies from those splits made 66 boxes of honey the last go around, and a few the first go around, probably over 80 boxes of honey this year. Maybe 75, 80 boxes this year, just those. And, but they've both lost about, they're both down to about 34, 35 colonies each spot. So I went from 98 so I've lost about 30, probably just say 30 out there. Yeah. Out of those. So like close to 30%, but I do think it's because possibly I didn't treat. I was thinking last year, a lot of it was queen. I think I had a lot of old queens, but this year, the bee yard, I thought I would lose some in. The donor colonies had the old queens. And then the new queens at the new location from the splits, they've just had almost equal loss. And so I'm not sure what the deal is, but
Well, I mean, like Jose was saying, though, I mean, you can't, when your hives go out for pollination,
yeah,
your bees don't stay in just one area. They go all
that's
over.
right.
So, it's a learning experience, and then you just
Oh,
move
yeah.
forward and, come up with a plan next year. That's all.
But Greg and Mike were down here and they saw my production. We went in and they're just, I've lost very, very few. I mean, very few of my production colonies so far.
Now,
They're just doing pretty darn good. I mean, they're not like boiling and huge, but it's fall. They're supposed to be backing off a little bit, even though there's somewhat of a flow coming in, I believe, right now. Or falls, if it hasn't started, it's about to. Certain areas, it's amazing how right here in my area where my colonies are, some bee yards will have a flow coming in, and 5 or 10 miles up the road, there's nothing. They're just,
nothing.
they're just, it's just crazy how that works. The
Yeah.
different, even here within our own little environmental, area here, our own little biosystem here, it's there's differences, and it's just crazy how that is.
Let me answer Russell here, and then I got a question for you. So, Russell, if I get another 500 pounds, I got I think 340, between 340 and 360 from spring. If I get the same exact amount from my fall harvest, I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. I'm gonna end up with several buckets sitting at the house, so I'll probably have to come up with some type of plan. But yeah, as of right now, I have no idea. So, but Bruce, you're saying you've had very little loss. I think the $1 million question now is how busy you were this year. If you have very little loss and most of those colonies over winter, what are you going to do in the springtime?
That's a very good question, Brian. Well, just in context, I started off last year. I was up to about 150 colonies last summer in 2021. And I honestly probably lost about 45 or 50% of them. I just had a horrible loss last year. And I was really discouraged and frustrated this time of the year, almost thinking about getting out, just really, really just down. And so I was down to probably 75 or 80 colonies, if I remember correctly, going into into 2022. And I sent 48 of them out to California. So I had whatever that was left. Let's just say I had 25 to 30 colonies left. And then just to show you how fast you can grow, late February, my buddy Tyler came across some queen cells over in Georgia, and he went and Davis called me, my other friend. Those two guys, three of us kind of do some stuff together. They're both way bigger than I am, but for some reason, they've invited me along for the ride. And Davis is like, "Hey, Tyler's going to get some cells. Do you want some?" And so I think I can't remember, maybe 50 or something like that. And Richard Prager, who's been in some of my videos, got some of those. And another local guy got just a few of them. And I ended up splitting basically everything I had here. Like it was the last weekend in February, split them all. Just didn't even look for the queen. Just took 2 or 3 frames of brood and, or whatever. I'm trying to make a pretty equal split. I took the boxes, set them across the bee yard. Didn't worry about where the queen was. And I dropped a queen cell in every single one of those colonies. So immediately I went from here locally, probably, let's just say 30 colonies to 55 or 60, something like that, or whatever it was. I don't even think it was that many. I think it was like 40.
Wow.
Anyway, I split everything I could. So that bumped me up quite a bit. And some of those didn't take, but it took them longer for some reason to mate. We had drones at the time, and for some reason it took a little bit longer to mate than usual. Some of them took like a month to 5 weeks to mate. It was crazy, I think.
Wow.
But they ended up, a lot of them ended up doing really, really well and super strong, made honey this year and everything. And if you look at my videos, particularly from the Ozark, you'll see a lot of those colonies were still in NUCS. I just never got them. I just kept stacking NUCS up. I never got some of those even into 10 frame boxes, because when the hives came back from California, all 48 of them were alive, and 44 of them were strong enough to split. So I split 44 colonies out of those 48. And so then I went from, and then I had 4. Well, so then I went from, what's that? 44 plus 48 is 92, right? Something like that. So I went 92 immediately,
Yeah.
plus whatever I had. So anyway, between splits and catching a couple swarms and everything, I ended up at around 150 this year. And I think I'm probably down to 120 or 130 now. I've lost a few. I haven't counted them exactly, but either way. So what you're asking, I mean, so even if I lose, say, 10 or 15 more, I'll still be over 100, which is way more than what I started last year. So the question is, what am I going to do? What I will probably do is see how much honey I can actually sell this year. If I can get all that sold, which it's slowed down quite a bit the last few weeks. If I can get that sold, then I will probably just kind of cap it at that next year. And then there are local processors where, if I understand properly, you can take commercial guys that have a commercial honey house. You can just take it and sell it to them, and they'll extract it and just buy the honey from you. So I may end up doing that. That's a wholesale price, but I've just got to see what I sell this year and kind of see how much I feel like I can move and then gauge it from there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what my plan is.
These guys here are funny. We got 3 boys bees. Look at that. Brian at 25.
We should take bets on this. We should run a contest of some kind to see.
Mr. Barry there says 30 hives on the horizon. They're funny. Jason was in here. I know he said 20. I'm like, no, you all are nuts.
The point is, though, Brian, I mean, you can just honestly, folks, you can grow really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it can grow almost, just so fast. Just logarithmically almost. Once you get to a certain point, because you just can split. I mean, you can just split and split and split. You don't even have to catch swarms. That's one way to do it. I personally am kind of backing off on that a little bit, because you don't control genetics at all when you do that, hardly, unless you know they're from yours.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying I'll never catch a swarm. I may if it's an easy one, but I have found that it's so fast and easy just to do splits.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the resources, even if you do walk away splits, or if you there's so many different ways to even create your own queen cells without having to graft and all that. There's so many things you can do.
Yep.
I mean, you can honestly, and not saying all of your colonies will be strong, but you can increase your numbers dramatically very quickly just by simply doing walk away splits, pure walk away splits in the spring. When you do that, you risk maybe some of those queens aren't going to be as good possibly, but man, you can, the ones that fail, you just combine them back, or you stick a queen cell, or you buy a mated queen or whatever. But once you get it down pat, once you figure it out, it's not hard to increase at all. You can do it. But the problem is then you got to think about expenses, equipment.
Right.
When you think about a box for bees right now, you've got, say, a 10 frame deep box. And these numbers, you guys all know what the prices are, but I'm just going to say kind of round numbers for an example. Just say the box is $20. Just say that. It may be more, but if you don't get them in bulk, it might be more, a little bit less, but just say $20. And then just say you pay, it's probably more like $4 a frame, but just say $3 a frame. That's $50 per box that you buy. And I think that's probably on the low end. Mm-hmm. And so if you have 10 hives and you expand to 20, you're looking at, $500 minimum just for the boxes, not including the bottom boards and the lids. And then if you want to stack them up, so you just got to start thinking about how everything grows so quickly, not only the bees, but also the expense.
Yeah.
So you just gotta kind of plan for all that. So
you do. And it's hard. That's the one difficult, I think that one difficult area in beekeeping where you have to look so much so far into the future. And that's where kind of like me, where I stay grounded with the number of colonies I have. You really have to early on, sit back and think, well, how far out do I want to build? How many hives do I want to get, in total? Because once you get the techniques down and you get the beekeeping down, you can expand like mad. It's just, It's not hard. It takes work, but anything worthwhile, takes work. But
yeah, and I'm going to answer Hell Hives question here real quick. Am I using Greg's queens to change your genetics or just as replacements? Change genetics, honestly. I want to calm my bees down a little bit, introduce some northern genetics, and I thought, who better to try than Greg's queens. The queens I've got, this is kind of strange. I don't know why this is, but many of the queens I've bought from people up north, just keep 2 or 3 grand around for.
It's easy.
That's right.
Easy.
Yeah, just use that money, all the money you're making on your honey, Brian, just to buy, the equipment. Anyway, but so I mean, I've had good experience with queens from up north here in this environment in the past. They've just done well. Tim Ives up in Indiana, I talked him out of some queens back in 2015, and man, those things did awesome. He's treatment-free guy. He does the triple deep, that's his concept, and he's developed a very strong, breed of bee, just initially cutouts and, by catching natural, bees from in Indiana, and he's got just these monster colonies, and those bees did really well here. The ones I bought from Iowa last year have done well, and then I anticipate Greg's doing well. So
yeah,
I kind of try to change the genetics a little bit by bringing in bees from different parts of the country, as well as the local mutts. If I get queen cells from wherever I get them, then they're going to mate with the local stuff. And so I've got just a mishmash of all kinds of stuff, and I don't know where. Honestly, I have no idea where most of them came from, but I do know which ones are queens because they got a pink dot on them. So there's no doubt which ones are his. Plus, I have the boxes marked in a certain way. I've got the bricks laying on them so I can tell which ones his are in. So that's pretty cool. But as far as growth goes, I see people on here talking about the different, how many they want and things like that. And all those are achievable. And that's kind of the whole point, is everybody has a different goal. Everybody has a different idea of what they want to do. And just, if I could give any type of wisdom, which I don't know if I'm all that wise or not, because I've killed a lot of bees in the last few years, but I would say just get good at what you're doing. Make sure you can handle the number of bees that you have before you try to go all in and just grow like crazy. Because what I did was, I really didn't do that. I just my whole goal was, when I first got bees, was just to get, my goal was 100 hives. That's what I wanted to do. I'm like, I can do that. It took me quite a few years to get there, but I really wasn't prepared. I'm still not sure I'm really prepared to take care of 100 colonies the way I really need to. Although I feel like I'm just kind of coming along for the ride most of the time and doing the best I can. But I would just encourage, and that's kind of the whole concept of Ian Stepler in a video he does. It's called the 10-day rule. If you ever watched that video, go back and watch it.
Yeah.
Just go to YouTube and type in a Canadian beekeeper and then put in 10-day rule. And he teaches, it's a very short video, but he teaches a very important concept there. And he obviously can explain it better than I can. But if you just get too many, you're going to end up with the number of bees that you can handle.
That's it.
If you expand, you can expand to 200 colonies, but if you're a 50 colony beekeeper, you'll be back at 50 hives, because you got to be able to take care of, in a timely manner, the things that have to be taken care of. But Loma Vista says, are you going to do a video on how to prep your hives for almonds this year? I probably will do some along. I'm still kind of debating, exactly what I'm going to do with that. I think I'm going to send them out there. I've been a little burnt out, to be honest, the last few weeks, and it is a lot of different preparation for the almond bees, because you have to, down here, the bees they're not growing at that time of the year to the extent that they need them to be out there for almonds by January. So you have to feed them. You have to artificially stimulate them. The temperature, the weather is fine for that. It doesn't stay cold very long here if it gets cold. And so you can do it, but naturally they grow a little bit slower. Mike Berry will tell you, he just likes to get his plenty of honey in there and just kind of let them do their thing. And then he doesn't like them to get super strong, super fast, because then you get in trouble in the spring here if you're trying to do that. Because if they get too strong too fast, and they just consume all their food sources, and then you got to feed them. You know what I mean? So you try to, there's a different management technique you need to use for your pollination bees and for your production colonies. So it's a lot of work. I mean, you're out there in them a lot of times in preparation for almonds when you probably wouldn't be in them otherwise. And so I'm still trying to decide exactly what I want to do with that. But yeah, there'll be some videos coming. If you go back the last couple of years, you can kind of see a lot of my preparation, what I was doing with them. I try to kind of do a vlog style on that kind of stuff, and you'll see some videos on that, and it'll probably be similar. It's really just a matter of feeding them up, feeding them, stimulating that brood growth.
Plump
And
them
you
up.
want them to be peaking. You want them to be really growing and going in that direction when they hop on the truck and go out there. I also want to keep them clean of mites. You want them to leave here clean, so they're strong and hopefully can come back alive. And so it's a different challenge, but it's doable for sure. A lot of people around here do it, or some people around here do it.
Yeah, I see DC's. I want to leave the honey in the deeps so I can give it back to them as needed this winter. I never, just a rule of thumb for me, I will never harvest a deep frame. Whatever they pack in the deeps, I leave for them. If they start to get honey bound, I will pull those frames, but I never harvest them. I keep those then. That way I can put back in to the colonies if they need it in the winter. But yeah, I'll plop them in the freezer and then I store them on my rack. So yeah. Greg, I thought Greg was good there for a second, but he said lost all internet, can't even run a speed test. We'll try to check in from my cell, but doubtful. Please apologize to everyone. Had so much, was looking forward to sharing. So
man, I hate that. We can just handle it for a while though. Keep working at it, Greg, man. We're not gonna give up on you. We're gonna keep this thing rolling for a while.
We're on his channel that we could just run wild.
That is true, man.
No.
That is true.
The gate has been opened.
Guys, if you guys have any questions, and there have been a few on here already, and hopefully we're answering them and catching them as they come in, but be sure to just put them, if you can put them in all caps, it makes it easier for us to see them.
Right.
And if we happen to miss it, just just repost it, because sometimes we miss them, because when the comments come in pretty quickly, it's tough to keep up sometimes. So
yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, should we still spin and give away stuff?
That's funny.
Do we have the capability to give away stuff on his channel, Brian? Do you have that capability?
I could share the wheel.
The wheel. Okay,
Yeah,
well, maybe we'll kind of see what we come up with.
Here, let me just test something out just to see if it works. See here.
Oh, Greg just did it. Or you're doing okay? Yeah, you're in here.
I did it as him. So let's see if that works with Nightbot. I don't know. I don't know if it will or not. Doesn't look like it is.
Doesn't look like it's got to be him doing it, probably, huh?
Oh, shh. He's back. He's back. Shh.
Oh.
I think he's back. Yeah. No, I could. I mean, if we were going to do a giveaway for anything, I could share the wheel. Yeah. That's okay. So
that's fun anyway, doing that.
It is, and I think everybody like that hashtag or the exclamation point winner, like we
Hell Hives. Greg is giving away 20 nukes and 20 queens this evening.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. That's it. There we go. It's on the internet, so it must be true.
All right, Jonathan Bennett. How thin of a split can you make and still have a honey production hive, and how long before the flow do you need to do it? That's a great question. And it really depends on the time of the year. It depends on where you're located. Once again, context is key. It depends on the queen. Here I have had some. I usually try to make my splits, decently strong. I don't like to do little 2-frame splits. I like to do, 2 to 3 frames of brood and then a frame of food and maybe an empty frame for me to dry out. And that's starting even in the spring in, March, April, whenever. And if you get if you get a nuke box full of bees, and if that queen gets made, or if you especially put a mated queen in there, you can get some honey out of them. I don't know how much it'll be, but it is possible. There he is. Hey, he's actually moving, and I can see. Man, we've been trying, Greg, but there's no replacement for you, man.
Oh, that's easy.
On your channel.
I tell you, I apologize. I'm not sure what the deal is. There's been so much going on here. We actually had some road work, and by road work, I mean chip and seal. And I'm not even sure if you guys know what chip and sealed roads are, but that's as good as it gets around here. For some reason, they came through and they cleaned out some ditches and did some chip seal, and Oh, the internet's struggling something fierce. So I don't know. I climbed it to the top of a tree and wrapped it in tin foil real quick. Came back down. So we're gonna roll with this for tonight. But
Hey, Greg, you've got
clip a line?
what's that?
Did they
clip
hit a
along?
line or anything?
They must have. Our lines are so old. It's whatever the step up from old coaxial cable is. Just the old. I think it's DSL. That's what we're running on. When we max out, like at the highest speed I've ever gotten is about 15 megabytes a second.
Wow.
And as soon
Hey,
as
let's go back and show Greg all the things we've given away. Everybody's been commenting on this here.
Oh,
Well,
cool.
Stuff we've given away.
Yeah.
Something about his flatbed truck. Gave that away.
Well,
Queen giveaway. We also gave.
Dan won all of your queens that you had from Bob and that. So
Oh, nice.
we figured
Okay.
And
you'd
somebody
Yeah.
said somebody won 20 queens and 20 nukes next spring.
Where was it?
Oh, that's
So
very gracious.
They're proposing we did that anyway. I don't know. We haven't done that one. That's been yet.
That's
have we, Brian?
hilarious. You guys are fun.
I can't find.
You guys, I'm sure I've been digging in there and talking about a lot, and now I feel weird jumping in here. So, where are you guys at with things? What are we talking about?
Well, we were just talking about the most recent question was first of all, Brian. Well, let's do the question first, and then we'll let you talk about your what happened over at Jason's. Brian talked about some, but maybe your perspective on that. But the question, one of the questions that came up recently was how strong does a split have to be for you to produce honey that year? And what I told him was, and I was just kind of talking about this when you came in, is that I try to make my splits pretty strong. Like I try to have a bunch of bees in the new nuke. I do very few splits that have like a frame or two of bees and brood. I like to have 2 or 3 frames of brood, just to basically frame a foundation and then frame a food. This is in the spring. I'm talking like maybe, March, April as early as we start doing splits here. And if you got a good queen cell or a good queen in there that goes to town really quickly, if they're good bees and if you got a good flow, then you can definitely, you can definitely make a little bit of honey. Probably not a lot, but you can make some. I've seen bees do it, especially if you leave them in that nuke and stick a second nuke box on top. They'll fill that joker up, and you can treat it just like a super. Like you can even put a third box on there sometimes with an excluder, and they will explode up into those 5-frame stacked up boxes. If you do that. So if you're willing to harvest deeps, or if you make some 5-frame mediums and utilize them as honey supers, just like you do on 10-frame boxes, they will really fly up into those really quickly. You get some honey off those. But for 10-frame boxes or 8-frame boxes, it's possible, but you just have to time it right. You have to have the right genetics and a good flow. And like you say, Greg, context is key. It's different everywhere. So that's where we were at. What do you think about that?
That's a great question. I think if it's going to be different for everybody, you have to know a couple. That's one of those questions where you answer the question with a question. You say, I need more information. You already said it. Context is key. Different parts of the country, different times of the year, with different equipment, with different bees, might do things just a little bit differently. We've just put out some videos this year. I'm so fried. We've put out a bunch of videos in this last week, some for the members only side of the YouTube channel and some for the regular stuff. But we've kind of introduced our viewers to Roy Adams. And Roy Adams is a local beekeeper. I'm his mentor through Hives for Heroes. He's very active in a lot through the Bee Club and things like that. Roy started off with a package, took that package, crowded it out, left it into a box, made a bunch of splits, and those are all kind of growing. You absolutely 100% can make honey off of a package in the single year. You 100% can make honey off a package that you split in half in the beginning of the year, if you manage it accordingly. If you're taking these, if you take a package of bees, a 3-pound package, and you split it in half and you add a queen and you put those both into a 10-frame box, it's going to take them a little while.
Oh, no. Greg, you're buffering.
Yeah.
Man.
on top, and you're going to make honey faster than you would ever believe.
Hey,
So
Greg, we lost you there for a second. You said it's going to take a little while. You said if you put them in a 10 frame box, and then we lost you. So what'd you say after that?
okay, if I cut out again, I'm just going to I'll bow out and check out on the replay a little bit later,
No.
so I don't drag
No.
us down here. But
We need the Greg Burns effect.
Yeah, you need to stick
I'm
around.
sure you guys
around.
I'm sure you guys are doing great. There's matter of fact, we were just at over in Warwick, Maryland, at Bohemia Bees, visiting with a bunch of great guys. There's a lot of fun collab videos. Brian's got one. Horizontal Bees, Ricky Rorick has one. Bohemia Bees has one. There's probably will be one from, I would think, Hickory Hives and Sawmill Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
What's fun about that is you're going to see several of the same conversations, but from different angles and probably with different tidbits.
Mm-hmm.
In one of those conversations, we were actually talking about sort of this very thing, but going back to the basic when it came down to the queen. We're talking about, yes, we can make queens with a handful of bees in a queen cell, and it will definitely make a queen. But there's something about the essence and the vibe of a hive. If you give them enough resources, if there's a larger support mechanism in place for that queen cell, there is just something about the queen. She's a little bit calmer, faster. She almost seems more mature, faster. She gets to town and just goes to work a little bit faster. Mm-hmm. The same thing can be said with splits. We can 100% make a split with a handful of bees in a queen cell. We can make splits even bigger. The bigger we make those splits, obviously, the faster they're going to grow, the faster they're going to get to that point of the year when your flow is. Mm-hmm. So how small can a split be and still make honey that year? It depends when you make the split. And I think it depends how many frames of bees do you need in your area before your bees and the size configurations of box that you're in are satisfied with the brood nest and feel like, okay, now we're going into savings account mode. That's going to be different, and it's going to be different, flow dependent, rain dependent. I would say on average, if you're somewhere between, I don't know, we've made honey in 5-frame boxes, just stacking 5-framers up. And by the time we get up to that third 5-frame box, usually they're just going to want that deep. Most of it ends up being honey. If we go 2 5-frame deep boxes and then an excluder, then we can put 1, 2, or even 3 5-frame boxes of honey above that. There's something to be said about learning to kind of tune in to that vibe and the essence of the colony, whether it's in 5-frame equipment or 10-frame equipment, and they get satisfied once they reach a certain size in those boxes, and then everything else is honey. So I could spend all night talking about some of those nuances, but whether it's 3-frame equipment, 5, 8, or 10, you got to find the vibe of the hive, where they want to go as far as brood, and then once they hit that point, you're just managing and just keeping them kind of pulsing, and so they're still making brood, but then everything above that is honey.
Yeah.
And you customize each. It's almost like you have to customize each colony too. Right. I know some people, like the big commercial guys, they kind of almost have to sometimes be a little bit more uniform. But really, what I've done is if you look at my bee yard in the middle of the honey flow, it's like I've got some that are just a couple of 3 boxes deep, and I got some that are stacked up 5 or 6 boxes because I just try to stay ahead of them a little bit. This past year, I totally ran out of honey equipment. That's one reason I ended up in some honey bound situations. I ran out of mediums because I kept stacking them up and trying to stay ahead of them. And so it is a customizing thing. You don't have to go into the brood nest. You don't have to go down there if you're managing them properly, but you do need to make sure you stay ahead of the bees. Because if you let them just pack it out, everything's capped up top and you don't add any space, they'll start backfilling.
Yeah.
If we had that this year in Ohio, I could honestly say, yep, this would have been a great year to do that, but context is key. We just, in our area of Ohio, our area of the country, we have had just set aside from, like Greg, you had your hiccup with the weather and that, and you were saying, well, there has to be a balance. We have those lows. Was last year's fall that low, and now this season we're just going to have that, bumper crop. But this year, I mean, it would have been a great year for anyone really, I think, to start in beekeeping if they stayed ahead of the flow, just because there were a lot of situations. Anil, for one, was saying this was the first year he ever saw a colony get pollen bound. So there were so many resources out there for them. This year, you probably could have almost done anything. So,
Yeah,
but context is
that's a
key.
good. That is this year when we at the learning yard, Brian. When we have the shop talk part, the earlier part when it's coffee,
Yeah.
donuts, and we're talking about stuff before we go out into the
Donuts?
field. Donuts.
Did you say donuts?
She's got me. Actually, it's not just Susie now. My daughter Izzy. They're cracking the whip on me. They've got me on keto. So what does that mean for this Saturday's learning yard?
Bacon?
Ooh, bacon.
There you go.
Just be bacon. There's going to be like 5 extra donuts for somebody because I'm going to try to stay out of
No.
them. I'm going to try
Yeah,
to stay out of them.
I need to stop that too. But yeah,
I
go
tell
on.
you though, man, yeah, yeah, that's a whole conversation about getting fit, not only mentally, but
Right.
physically to do the work that we need to do in the bee yard and on the farm. We can sometimes let things go just
All
a
right,
little too far.
Greg, I got to address this question here. Alhambra Orchard and Apiary, I assume they are Arkansas fans from the question. And if Arkansas beats BYU and Alabama this year, which they're playing both of my favorite teams, they got to beat them both, then I will actually wear an Arkansas hat on this chat for a few minutes.
Ooh.
And I will sign it and send it to you. But
Oh man.
I don't know if you have a particular Arkansas hat you like, but if that happens, send me the hat, or I can order one. It doesn't matter, and I will get that to you. So you're laying it down there for me.
Okay.
I am hoping BYU is good enough to beat Arkansas, but Arkansas is looking really good. I know Alabama is, of course, good every year, and so we'll see what happens there. But it's all fun. I mean, it's just so much fun. I love college football, and those kind of things make it a lot of fun. But yes, I will wear the hat for part of the chat, and I will sign it and send it to you if they beat both teams, both of my favorite teams. That would be rough. No, this is Alabama, Hell Hives. You know that. I think you know that.
Yep. Hey,
It is an A. It is an A. Now there are 3 A's, and you guys always say Atlanta. The Atlanta hat is different. It can be blue or red, and it has a different A. And Arkansas's A is also different. And the Auburn fans make fun of my hat, or they make fun of. I've heard them call this the mullet A because it's got the little mullet right there. So if you want to look at it that way, that's one thing that Auburn fans say. And so if you've never heard that before, but all I can say is, although Alabama almost lost this past week, and they do know how to win. And so far this year, BYU also knows how to do that. But it's early. We'll see what happens.
yeah.
We can talk bees again. I'm sorry, guys.
Did and getting back to bees, down at the learning yard. I will say, this Saturday there's got to be an inspection on the top bar hive.
Okay.
There's gotta be. I gotta see that thing. I think everybody too. I think a lot of people here, they saw when it very first got started. Now we're X amount of months later, how is the top bar hive? But everybody too, did everyone watch the videos, whether it was on Jason's or mine or Horizontal Bees, of Susie's rocket ship 1.0?
Oh man, you're gonna get me in so much trouble with these crazy configurations there. That was something else. I don't know what you call that thing. I like weird, just goofy stuff. At some point, well, I'm trying to just keep an open mind and a closed mouth. It's interesting. If I brought something like that home, yeah, that I don't know. I that would be a challenge. The top bar hive has been special. And Brian, that would be a fun video for you to come down, because we're kind of, we're winding things down. I mean, the goldenrod is on hot and heavy. We're getting gem sock smell. The asters haven't popped up yet, so I know we probably have another 2 weeks, 3 weeks of a flow still to go. The weather looks, perfect. This, all things considered, this year has been a bumper crop year.
Yeah.
everything is just going absolutely nuts, including that top bar hive. I won't spoil it. I'll wait until you get out here with your camera, but it is just it completely unexpected on what that thing would do. So that's going to be interesting just to see exactly what it looks like now.
You know, it's funny though, because I know that hive sat around for a little bit and it was always just a lawn ornament, is all it basically
Yeah.
amounted to. And now it's just going nuts. I watched your video earlier when you guys were going through the colonies.
Yeah.
And when I saw those capped frames in that Flow Super,
I was hoping you'd see that.
it's almost like every time I see that, somebody just takes a little poker and they're just going, just getting me in the side.
Okay,
You
well
know?
here's so if you haven't if I know there's a lot of great videos out there, and it's hard for everyone to stay caught up on all the things, and I totally appreciate that. We've put out, I think, I'm afraid to even say it because I don't know that we'll ever have a week like it again, but we've put out let's see, the murder sauce video. We put out the uh, the Death Wish beekeeper Roy Adams, and then we put out today. We just put out
Yeah.
the learning yard, the damage inspections, kind of assessing all that. We've also tried to do create like a little members only spot where we can just put kind of off the wall, longer format, inside look type stuff. And we put out several videos of
Yes.
out this week. So I think that's like 5 or 6 videos all in one week. It's probably never. I hope to keep up some of that speed, but we were able to kind of show folks on the member side of it. They got to see the very first lighthouse queen and what she looks like, and it's just, I mean, it's just been one of these years. You know, there's so much I wanted to say. My mind is so just fried right now. I'm trying to remember some of the things I wanted to talk about, but I'm sitting here with. Look at these. I mean, I'm still pulling queens, and so these queens here are 2 lighthouse queens.
Oh my god.
And lighthouse storm queens. These were grafted. This is part of the entire storyline. These are going to a couple special folks. One I've been doing a lot of mentoring with over the phone, and I'm looking forward to getting that one to another fellow named Greg. This one, I think this guy is actually on here tonight. John Lawler, if you're on here, this one
right there.
Yep, this one is for you, buddy. Yep. You probably can't. It probably gets annoying if we try to put stuff up to the camera. But what we have here is just a very dark tiger striped, and there's also pink dots on these ones. So John, that one's yours. I'm going to get with John hopefully tomorrow to get that to him. What's so weird about this year is we're in mid-September, and oh, Lisa's watching. Yeah, the pink. The one of them has a yin yang, yellow and pink. We have, guys. I don't even know how to say this. We have drones hatching. We have drones getting sealed. We have just. If there was ever the year of abundance, I mean, it's this year. It's the year of the rabbit. It is absolutely insane. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. I mean, we're getting ready to this weekend. Are you guys ready? We're going to be making mid-September splits.
Oh.
In Ohio. I mean, that is just outlandish. We're going to be busting colonies down, adding queens. I'm sure most of the folks watching are probably semi-aware of the circumstances. If you're not, go back, check out the Picking Up the Pieces video, the live stream from the storm damage, and then kind of finish up on today's video, and you'll get the whole entire picture. But in a nutshell, we were absolutely blessed by a lot of things, but we're in a situation now where we have all these queens this late in the year, and to try to walk and talk you guys through all that, I think I said what needed to be said in those videos, but it is an absolute blessing to be talking about it right now, to where I can hold up and say, I have extra queens right now. Now, of course, those ones are spoken for. I have enough
That's
extra
crazy.
queens that to not only repair all the damage, but for growth and to make some extra splits to really double down on numbers for the spring, which is going to be tremendous for us for our queen rearing next year. We're going to be able to raise a lot more queens because we're going to be going with a lot more numbers. It's I'm just grateful. I'm thankful. We're just when you can be in that spot where you can just feel um, that's where you are. There's so much I wanted to say about that. Before I broke up earlier, um, Lisa, Grammy's midwife Homestead, had said that she had penned a song called "The Lighthouse," and I've got to know that's some folks totally may just tune out here for a second, but there's probably a lot of folks in here who are hillbilly or Southern enough to appreciate good Southern gospel. And I got a feeling that song, Lisa, is an old Southern gospel tune. And I'm thinking probably either covered by, I don't know, maybe Dottie Rambo or the Gaithers. So comment, Lisa, and let me know which version that you had in mind there. But that's the if you haven't checked it out, whether Southern gospel is your thing or not, check out that song, "The Lighthouse," because it does say a lot. If it wasn't for the lighthouse, where would I be now? And I know when we were in the middle of the storm, there was a lighthouse, and that's what we clung to. That's what got us through. That's what put one foot in front of the other. Okay, it is Dottie Rambo. That's a good one. Yep, I know all about that. There's a lot of folks right now going through a lot of storms. I have a good friend of mine just lost his son. So for all you folks who are believers, just if you would send some thoughts and prayers out for the Dahmers family. They lost their son. I can't even imagine what that would be like. But they're good folks, friends, podcasters, YouTubers, homesteaders, just good folks. A lot of folks are going through storms, whether it's financial, with their bees, with their farm, with their families. And so it's fitting that the lighthouse theme keeps popping up no matter what aspect of life that it is. But here we are. We've all grown our bee yards. We've done all of the work. We've taken all the stings. Maybe we've harvested some honey. We've made some splits. We've maybe reached some people. We've done all these things, and here we are now with goldenrod on. We're at the very end of the year. And next year kind of hinges on how we actually follow through, how we dig in, and what we do right now. A lot of these things matter big time as far as next year. Winter is coming, and all forecasts are showing so far that we are going to have record cold and record snowfall in Ohio. What that means is if you are south of Ohio, or if you're north, you're probably going to be okay. You're going to be probably even colder and have more snowfall, which is good. But if you're south of Ohio, that Kentucky, Tennessee line and further south, you might expect some moisture. That's how you manage that. It's going to be a lot different for us in Ohio. Man, I hope and pray that we get cold and we get snow. That is far easier to get colonies through the winter than when it's exactly, Brian, when it's that up and down and it's the cold and it's the warm and it's the constant rain and it's the ice. That is the real challenging. So we're already at 9:09, but maybe guys, we could spend a little bit of time talking about strategies for fall to set us up to get into the winter and to be in that place that we want to be for winter. Bruce, I know you probably have, out of the three of us here, you probably have the most unique wintering strategy as far as the context that me and Brian are in. What is your kind of plan for fall and winter?
Well, it is obviously way different. And, what you mentioned earlier about how cold can actually be an advantage is true. Mike on here talks about how he much prefers the cold winters. And it seems, I think, Mike, if I'm not mistaken, and I know that I've had, my bees have done well in the colder winters that we have, although we don't have, even our coldest winters aren't probably as cold as your mild winters up there. But if you guys will remember, I'm sure you do, that last year, probably, January, February, when you guys are up there freezing out, just having a horrible time with cold weather. I would send you guys pictures of 70-degree days in the middle of January, that type of stuff. But then the next week it would be like in the 20s and 30s or whatever. I don't know if we ever got in the 20s much last year, but it's just a roller coaster for us here. And you just really don't know what to expect. You might have a Christmas day where it's 80, or you might have a Christmas day where it's freezing. So you just really don't know. It's so inconsistent here. And that actually presents, people say the warm weather is good. And it is in some ways, in that the bees never completely brood down. They never completely go into a winter cluster for a long period of time. They obviously, if it gets below 55, 60 degrees, they'll cluster. And if it's been hot, they'll cluster. It seems like almost warmer temperatures, maybe 55, 60, sometimes a little bit. But, you know, they'll cluster, but it's for a short period of time, because we're always within, it seems like, a couple of days of having a 55 or 60-degree day or a 70-degree day. And so the bees are out flying quite a bit during the winter, which I think helps with the nosema problems that you can have, because they can go out and they can clean themselves. They can defecate or whatever and get cleaned out. But they also burn through food stores very rapidly. If you have a February, which many times we'll have a warm snap in February, you know, you'll have the January red maple that'll bloom, and it really starts to stimulate the bees. It'll be kind of a mild temperatures. It may have a cold day here or there, but mild temperatures, and they'll start to brood up and get really active and fill those colonies up. And then, you know, you'll have like a week in February where it's just warm. It's like in the 70s and 80s. So those bees just really go crazy. But you may have a dearth that comes in somewhere in February or March. And so they will starve. Like, you'll have a hive that has a super of honey on there, and within 2 weeks, they'll have nothing. They'll have zero food in there. So that's the difficult thing. And so the way I approach it is, you know, somebody mentioned earlier on here, I think maybe before you came on, Greg, about leaving, you know, all the honey in a deep box or something like that. And down here, I learned the hard way that if you leave too much honey on these colonies down here, you can get in trouble. And the big reason for that is hive beetles.
Yeah.
Because as the bees brood down, as they have less population, if you have a couple boxes of honey stacked on there and those hive beetles start laying eggs and get out of control, you'll have that hive slimed out in no time. And so I actually try to keep the honey down. I try to keep it just to a reasonable amount. I try to keep it at most a box worth of honey on there. Sometimes not even that much. Make sure I've got 2 or 3 good solid frames of honey on there. And then I kind of monitor them, and I'll feed them. I do some open feeding down here. I haven't done a lot of bucket feeding. I probably should do more of that, either bucket feeding or in hive feeding. And I just try to monitor it. I try to go through and peek in on a few frames here or there on a warm day and see if I've got pollen supplies, see if I've got honey in there, just really checking the weight. Mike says down south they forage when there is no forage, and that burns food. That's exactly right, Mike. That happens very quickly down here. And so, you know, if you want to build bees up, if you want to keep them strong and come into spring with a lot of numbers, then down here's a good place if you really feed them and take care of them and monitor them. But they can get in trouble in a hurry down here, just because the weather is so crazy. So right now, what am I doing? Just not a lot. The bees they're bringing in the fall flow starting, the cotton. Most of the hives have some honey in them. Just kind of checking them, peeking in, making sure they look healthy. And just going to kind of leave them alone until probably October, unless I sense a problem is happening. And then I may treat for mites again. I'm thinking about using Apigard maybe next time. Right now, the bees are pretty clean, the ones I've checked. Had a few that were a little more than I wanted to be, but for the most part, they're pretty clean. And so, but I just want to keep those mites down. So I'm going to be monitoring food, monitoring bee activity, monitoring dead outs, see if I've got any of those, trying to stay on top of that, and then just try and keep the mites down. And then my plan is to possibly treat with Apigard, or possibly maybe the Apivar/Amitraz type treatment one more time, then do oxalic acid sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas, when the brood cycle is at its lowest. We never go completely broodless here. Rarely. Maybe some carniolans. Maybe your bees will kind of go a little bit more queenless, or not queenless. Hopefully not queenless.
I
But,
hope not.
but broodless. Maybe they'll brood down a lot more than some of the local bees will. They have, I think, a heavy Italian influence. But I hope, I like them to brood down some. But most of my bees, a lot of them don't brood down a lot. But I'm going to probably try and hit them with some oxalic, you know, around Christmas time or a little before. and then just roll into next year and just see what happens. But it's a lot of just monitoring, checking weights and so forth, and getting them ready and making sure they got food.
That seems like it can be an extreme challenge if
is.
you are a southern beekeeper, if you're not on point, because if you're not on top of mites and you're not on top of feed, you're going to be having an abundance of mites and hive beetles and you name it. Is there a certain, what is the longest point, what's the longest stretch that your colonies go without you cracking lids?
It just depends. I just do a lot of walking around looking at the bee entrances. Probably some of them will go 3 or 4 weeks or longer without me actually cracking the lid, or I may just crack and peek in.
Yeah.
But I don't worry too much about breaking that propolis because we don't have the extreme cold. So I think the bees, they're usually lots of times, I think, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they can find some stuff maybe to do some propolizing type stuff in the winter. As a matter of fact, those NUCS I do that have an upper entrance on them, sometimes in the wintertime, they work on it all winter, but they'll pretty much close that top entrance off. They'll have like a sheet of propolis hanging down because they'll do that. And they do that during the winter. Like they start doing it whenever it starts to get cold. But that's, probably the most of 3 or 4 weeks. And sometimes it's just because I don't have time to get out and see them. I don't worry as much about it in the wintertime getting into them. As long as if I walk around, I can lift them up and they feel like they've got good weight. I don't necessarily feel like I have to go into the colonies. But now if I do lift up a couple of colonies and there's no weight in them, then I kind of get into a little bit of we got to make something happen. I'll go through a couple of them, see if it's a food, what the issue is, if it, and if I need to feed them, I'll feed them. Last year, I've told this story on here before. Last year, I think it was in February, I was actually up working on some splits. It might've been about that time that we made those splits early in the year that we talked about earlier. It may have been before you came on, Greg, but there was zero food in Ozark and up at the farm, zero. And now in other areas, like other bees that were fine, but in those 2 areas, there was nothing. And so I happened to have some Hive Alive fondant that I was going to just wait until this coming year to use. And I think I put on a single deep, I think I put a half a pack. On a nuke, I think I put a quarter pack. And then on the double deeps, I put a full pack of that stuff, and it saved me. It just flat out saved me. I think I saved probably 20 plus colonies, maybe 30. I don't remember how many it was, but I saved quite a few colonies by doing that. If I hadn't have noticed them, they had zero food period in those colonies. I mean, they burn
through it so fast, don't they?
It's seemingly overnight, man. It happens so quick.
Yeah.
So
maybe
anyway,
we can talk into trying some, maybe we'll have to get you some bucket feeders just to try for just at those times of year to where, I mean, it may be up here, even if it's January and February and we get those days above 50, and I know they're going to be out foraging, going to the bathroom. There's nothing for them to snag. You see them in the chicken feed. You see them trying to just get it wherever they can. Man, there's a lot of colonies that I really think got saved over this winter because I could put a bucket of Pro Sweet on there. It's thick. Yeah. It's heavy. They can use that for their day-to-day when it gets cold. I just turn those buckets upside down. And I think they're just burning up those the resources throughout the day instead of just burning up what was there. I think you're Bruce. You're muted there.
Yeah, he muted himself.
That was not intentional. I did that accidentally. I see Mike said he had a similar thing. I think about the same time I did it. He put Hive Lives on some of his and saved them.
Nice.
But one thing that I think a lot of people may not understand, I didn't understand this for years, especially if you're a newer beekeeper, is that honey is good. It's food storage for the bees. It is not their preferred. It's not the best food for the bees. The best food source for the bees is the nectar, right? The nectar they bring in.
Sounds outlandish to say that, doesn't it? But that's a fact.
But when you look at, if you think about when there's a good flow going on and nectar flowing into the colonies, you can set a honey super out there full of honey, and the bees will fly right by it to go to the flowers that are blooming that they would rather forage. And that just shows you right there they prefer that. I mean, and now if there's a dearth, they will clean that honey up in a few minutes. But if there's a nectar source going on, and if you watch some of Bob's videos and probably some of your videos as well, they prefer, it's, even straight up 50-50, 1-to-1 sugar water is better for the bees than honey. And so, you know, it's important to leave honey on the colonies, especially if you're going to let them get through the winter and you're not going to want to get in them or you're not able to. But I think there's something to be said for being willing to take some honey off and being willing to feed your bees. That's just a little principle that I've learned in the last probably 3 or 4 years that I didn't understand initially, is that the nectar is better for the bees. That's what they prefer. And I think doesn't ProSweet try to imitate nectar? Tell me about, I don't know that much about ProSweet, Greg. Why don't you tell us about ProSweet a little bit?
Yeah, it's just way heavier of a feed. The nectar, it's more like a 3-to-1, 11.5 pounds a gallon. It's, you know, pretty much a mixture of an inverted sucrose or an inverted sugar with a little bit of glucose and dextrose, with the fructose, glucose, and then sucrose. It's kind of that combination there, and those are kind of mixed together for stability. So it's really it's, I guess you could say, shelf stable, but it doesn't have a tendency of freezing or separating. It doesn't spoil. And so when you put that on the bees, what I've noticed is, you know, you could take the same strength colony. If you could have 2 colonies that were identical, you could have you could put a 1-to-1 mixture in a 1-gallon bucket and put it on colony A, and then you could put ProSweet in a 1-gallon bucket and put it on colony B, and they will suck down the 1-to-1 2 or 3 times faster than they will ProSweet. It's not because they prefer the 1-to-1 over the 3-to-1. It takes them a lot longer to process. It takes them, they have to suck down more of that 1-to-1 to get the same viscosity or richness that they're getting off the 3-to-1. So you're obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, because maybe somebody does it and there's a way to do it. In my mind, feeding 1-to-1 sugar syrup in a 1-gallon bucket in January is could be really tricky. Will they eat it? Oh, I'm sure they probably will. But that little bit thicker feed is already inverted. It's closer to what they're actually going to utilize immediately. And then if they actually do want to store any of that, just so they can start, chewing on that, maybe as they're clustering or breaking and going, maybe they can. I don't know that I see them store a lot of that in the wintertime. It's just like a little buffer. There's a lot of things that we see with our bees that, some folks would automatically discount because there isn't a scientifically peer-reviewed paper that's came out to support the field science. But there's something to be said about understanding what the bees are actually doing, like if the bees had a life purpose, what it is that they do. Those bees are always working. They're always foraging. They're always gathering. When the weather breaks and it's warm enough in December, January, February, what are those rascals doing? They're not writing Christmas cards and taking the winter off. No, they are out looking for anything to do. That is like their fulfillment. That is the bees living their best bee life, if you could say that, is they are out gathering and doing and foraging. And so when you get like up here in Ohio and there's nothing out there except for maybe some grain dust or some corn dust in chicken feed, yes, they're gonna snag some of that and bring it back. But when you can give them a little bit of feed, it's almost like you're giving them something to do. You're giving them just that little bit of purpose. It's hard to explain, but there's a certain vibe and an essence the colony has when it has that thing to do. So they have that thing to do. They also have the carbohydrates right there on the colony that helps sustain them. All these things, of course, are not going to get a sick on the Fritz colony through the winter, but it's things that we can do to just maintain weight and keep things moving through the winter until the weather finally does break. And like you mentioned, the maples start to bloom, pollen, the nectar starts to start to come in. And now the bees are back to doing all that. So so ProSweet for us is not only a game changer late in the year, it's what we use all year. I have not thinned or cut or mixed feed all year long on everything from splits, queen boxes, and growing out colonies. It's been straight ProSweet in our 1-gallon buckets, and there's a place for everything, and I think that works out kind of good for us.
Thanks, Matt, for the super sticker. I know that Greg appreciates that.
Matt, thank you. Yeah.
Real quickly, as far as that goes, and then we can move on to the next question. Before you came on, Greg, I asked folks if they would put their questions in all caps. We'll see them better. But what I've done, and it might just be a time thing for me. It might just be because I'm lazy. I'm not sure, but I've done a lot of open feeding, and down here you can get away with that in the wintertime. And my philosophy behind that is that, and I know in some states, I guess like Tennessee, it's supposedly illegal to do that, but it's saved me a few times. I put my black totes out there. I put holes in the side, kind of like Ian does. Ian uses, I think, more the clear totes, but put some my food, whatever it is, whether if it were Pro Sweet, that's what I would probably use, or I use the sugar water, or I have used some corn syrup, believe it or not, and it's worked out okay. And what happens is those bees on the days when it's warm enough for them to forage, they get out and they get it. And when it's not, they don't. And I've had pretty good success with that. I don't know that it's the best way to do it. I think the buckets probably is the best way to do it, because with the type of holes you put in there, it's not going to drip on them. Is it in the wintertime when it gets cold? That's another concern I've had with feeding over the bees in the wintertime is, does it drip on the bees if it's too cold?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have that issue at all when you feed when it's cooler?
That's a great question. So 90% of the bucket feeders that are on the market are using the melted wire screen inside of the lids. And I'm not want to say that that's a poor design or that what we use is better. But one of the challenges with that mesh screen is that it's kind of a one flow suits all. And those tend to put a little bit more liquid inside of the hive. So if you were to use something like that in a sensitive time of year where you don't want liquid dripping on the bees, those mesh screens are challenging. Now, the plugs that we use, you can see those right on our website at nature'simagefarm.com. What is neat about those, I wish I had one. Actually, I do. Give me one second. Let me stretch and grab this.
Fred Dunn 2.0. Fred Dunn 2.0 right there, Greg. Just reach around behind you and grab what you want to grab.
We've also freshened up our website a little bit. So for folks who visit it regularly, it's going to look just a little bit different. There's a lot more functions. I think NUCS for 2023 and Queens are also now available, including plugs and things. But there's the plugs, and I'll show you what the difference is on these. I'll pop one of these out. Let's see. Okay. It's kind of hard to tell, but what is nice about these plugs is you drill holes in the plugs. If you want to feed a one frame split, you can drill to get one of these blanks and just drill one hole. If you want to feed a nuke or a single, you can just drill 3 holes on these. If you're like Bob and you're putting on weight with 1-to-1, he'll drill up like 8 holes on those. The neat thing is the same plug is adjustable. You can drill more holes in it. If you want less holes, you can put a different plug in. They snap right into the bucket lids. If you're going to Hive Life Conference, we're going to have these available real soon with Hive Life pricing. You can pick them up right from the conferences too, or pick them up here from the farm. But it's a nice design because when this is on top of the colony, it works just like the old 1-quart mason jars where it's using vacuum to percolate. When you set this on top of we use feeding covers that we build that have a hole in the lid that we can then take one of these blank plugs and use it as a lid closure. If there is times where it's heavy rains or you definitely know you're not going to have a bucket on there, you can just pop a plug right in that lid and it's closed off, and it's beautiful. What's nice about this, Bruce, just like what you were talking about. So let's say you know it's going to be cold and you don't need to have feed at all on there. Well, Brian's going to laugh because he's probably heard me, with this bad joke at Learning Yard, is that these buckets have a very sophisticated built-in on-off switch. So right now, if this is on top of a colony, that's on, and then if you flip it over, it's off. Okay, and then see, Brian, I'll do it again for Brian.
It's
on,
magic.
Off. That's the nice
amazing.
thing. I mean, it's and I'm being sarcastic, but it's literally that simple. You can just set it right on top of the box, right over top of the hole, and the weight of that's going to keep everything sealed off. it's just I'm a big fan of simple technology that is extremely effective. And these 1 gallon buckets are just that. So what size holes, Mike Berry? We have fooled around with literally every type of hole, and they all work great. But I think the easiest, the most uniform size hole to start with is a 1/16 inch drill bit, a good sharp bit. Start with 2 holes. If you're feeding 1-to-1 on a 5-frame box, maybe start with 2 holes. Go to 3 holes as that box kind of fills up. If you're making bigger 3 to 5 frame splits and thicker syrup, go to 3 holes for just about everything. I do not have a bucket anywhere out there on all the colonies that have more than 3 holes in it, and that's with ProSuite, and that works out beautifully. What's nice about the buckets is that it works on vacuum. It's simple technology. If you've seen that video, I think we were the first ones to have that kind of a video out on bucket feeders. It's been years ago, and what we were using then and what everyone started doing was using the pull tab lids. Now those are great and those work out fine, but those are a pain in the neck to clean because you actually have to clean the bucket through the plug hole. Well, when we put that video out, that the company was sold out on the tear tab lids. All they had was these regular lids. We started using regular lids only years ago, so I bought a few hundred of them the first round, started using those, and those seal off just as good as the tear tab. But when it's time to clean the buckets out, you can just pull that off and clean it.
That's a big difference because the ones I have, my buddy Rusty made some with them. They had the pull tab ones, and yeah, they are. If they get any type of, they need to be clean. Funky. They need to get any. It's really tough to clean them, and they're getting brittle. I've had them for a few years now, and I've used them a little bit, but I haven't used them a lot. And the other thing I found with those was actually, I think, didn't you make a video years ago about how to make these buckets?
Years ago.
I think that's one that I might have seen, and my friend Rusty may have seen that. And what I found was, I don't know if Rusty ever really used them much, but when I flipped some of them over, they would leak also on the top of the hives. Sometimes I don't know if we cut the hole, if it's a little too big or what, but it would leak sometimes, and just you'd have it running off the side of the colony and stuff. Sometimes they just didn't seal real good sometimes, but I guess you have to have a perfect size hole saw, perfect size bit to use on there.
Yep. The plugs, while they might be a 2-inch plug, the hole has to be smaller than that. And so what we use is an adjustable hole saw that we can actually adjust it and make it even smaller than what we need. So it fits in there really nice and tight. Yeah. Like with these things, you probably, when you snap these in, they lock in. Yeah, it's locked in tight, and then it doesn't leak. But if you don't get this hole right, there's a little shoulder and a collar on these plugs. It won't seal, and those will leak. That's not really a bucket design issue. One of the biggest factors is, and this is a rabbit hole that I'm going to avoid going down the rest of the night because once I get going, I just won't stop. You guys know me and my rabbit holes, but when we put out all the links to how to make this, Brian, that video, I don't even know if you could even find it. It's several years old now. How to build a one gallon feeder bucket or something like that. When we put all the links out there, you couldn't get any of the equipment. And then the equipment that was available, we started eventually getting into all the Rona and all the COVID availability of things. Well, all the hole saws were coming out of China, and not all hole saws are created equal. If anyone's looked at a hole saw, if you do not put a set of dial calipers on it and measure the OD, the outside dimension of the teeth, 9 times out of 10, you'll find a hole saw that while the shoulder of the hole saw might have been 50 millimeters, the teeth are just offset just enough to where it'll actually make the hole 2 inches, and that's too big. And the plugs are loose, and it'll just pour out, and you'll drown bees. So the idea is make sure the hole is small enough that plug will actually.
There it is.
Wow, that's old school. Look at that. So that's a fun. If you want to see, there was a video earlier of Nick Zukes, a local guy, great guy. He came and visited. We have some of his honey on display here. That was back in the beginning, Nick. That's what it looked like. It was, man, I think we had 120 colonies literally in the side yard here at the homestead, and the buckets actually were the single most the greatest contributing factor to growing and raising bees quickly, with finding that maintenance and time balance, because before that we were using quart jars and trying to bring out 110 quart jars 3 times a week was ridiculous. And you end up tripping over yourself, mixing up feed and doing this and doing that. So when we switched to the 1 gallon buckets, it was a night and day difference. Now we can leave a pail on there for 10 days, 14 days, even sometimes. And that gave us just enough time to get back and to build the efficiencies going through and actually working all the hives, working all the colonies, and things started to go uphill quick, because now instead of cleaning jars or broken glass, or man, if you guys, Brian, did you ever use quart jars on top of your, and you did, Bruce, did you ever use quart jars?
I still do some, and I
Still do?
hate it. I hate it.
Don't you love it when they get so nasty and you go to wash the rims and the lids, and then you get them on top of a quart jar, and then you can't get them off, and they rust on there as soon as you wash them the first time. And then you get it and you pull off so hard you crack the entire mason jar.
Yeah,
That's
they're a
just
pain. I will tell you this: you mentioned the hole saws being different. If you on those 2 3/4 inch hole saws you use for those quart jars, which that's how I didn't when I used the bucket feeders, I just used the 2 3/4 inch holes. I didn't have the plugs for them, so I continue to put the rings from the quart jars in there to block them. But anyway, I also use tape, and it's just a hassle. I like the idea of using your plugs to just plug it when they're not being used. But so there is definitely a difference between your cheap hole saws, like the 2 3/4 inch ones, and the carbide ones, the really good quality ones that are more expensive. If you use the cheap ones, they're not quite big enough. They don't quite work well on the quart jars. But if you use the carbide ones, for some reason, the hole is perfect and they slip right down there just right. I don't know what the difference is. It's just a little bigger hole. I'm not sure why that is. But man, it really works. I use this. I think it's a Spider brand is what it's called. I bought the carbide bit, and man, that joker, whenever I've used that hole saw, it works. Just the glass jars slide in there so easily. And with the other ones, I get so frustrated because you have to just jam them in and try and get them to go in. So it is different. Like you said, that is true. There's hole saws aren't always, they're not the same.
Different sizing, all based on just a little tiny. I mean, just a little tiny hair.
The teeth,
just a frog's hair width on each side of that shoulder, and it sticks out just enough to where that hole is too big, and now you got problems. Whether it's in your lid, whether it's, but I love buckets, and I could spend all night talking. And maybe we'll just do a whole show one day on buckets, because there is so much to talk about feeding.
We could do a whole show on feeding, and maybe even have Bob or somebody in to kind of give some, if you would. But
Brian, we were talking about fall and getting ready, and what our plans are for kind of getting everything tuned up for fall to get ready for winter, because it's coming. What does your fall and going into winter strategy look like with your colonies and your goals for the spring?
Mine's a lot different. I mean, just with my scale, well, I guess it's not that different, but as soon as I pull my supers, I'll go through and assess each colony, just look at the deeps and, weigh them out, see how much stores they have on them. But like I said earlier, I never touch the deeps throughout the season, other than pulling frames, honey frames, if they start getting into a situation where they get honey bound. So I leave that throughout the year. I will probably go back to doing my 2-to-1 with the Hive Alive supplement in it. I may end up in one of my visits down to your place getting some Pro Sweet. I've never used it. So I might just, do 5 colonies with, my 2-to-1 Hive Alive mixture, and then I might do a couple others with the Pro Sweet just to try it out. So I'll just, I throw the feed on them until they just stop taking it. I've gone through, I mean, in Ohio, when that fall flow stops, they will just, devour the feed when you put it on them. Yeah. So I just provide it and provide it and provide it until they quit taking it. Mite strategy here in the fall I know I need to do a wash and just check where I'm at. Um, I'm thinking on tossing some strips back on them after I pull my supers, just because we'll have time. We have until our winters have been getting later. So if I pull my supers here in another week or so, throw some strips on them for 42 days, we have plenty of time. So get my mites under control there.
Are you talking
I
Apivar or Formic?
Apivar. Yeah,
Yeah.
Formic. I'm just that stuff gives me. I have PTSD when someone says Formic. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think Mike Berry tried it. I'm not sure. I don't think he liked it very much either. We talked about it. We talked on the phone the other day, and
He
he
likes
didn't care
some
for it very
hop
much.
guard strips, doesn't he? Don't you, Mike?
Isn't it the same? Isn't Hop Guard also formic acid? Isn't that what it is? I believe it
I'm
is.
not sure.
I think Hop
I
Guard
think
has
it.
some special sauce in there with actual hops, I think, isn't it?
Oh, maybe
Yeah,
I
something.
might have been wrong. Yeah.
But so I'll get my feet on them. I'll get my strips in my Apivar, and I really need to just decide. I mean, I've always thrown wraps on my colonies. I almost have made up my mind, and this year I'm not going to do that, just because so many other people do not. It's kind of like you know, if I expand out any more, I'm not saying for everybody on here, Mike Berry and everybody else, I'm not saying that I am, but there might come a day where I will. So why not get all of my techniques and everything ironed out now, so that I don't have to waste the time wrapping any more hives because it's time consuming. When I would do those foam wraps, it's I spent an entire day cutting that foam and getting everything all set, and I don't want to waste that time. So I probably this year, I may end up getting a board or something to put on top of them just so that the snow doesn't build up as much. I'll have like a foot overhang in the front so that so that I try and keep that snow off of the front of the colonies. Um, but that's about it. And I don't know, me through the winter, everybody knows prior, I've always used those Vivaldi boards, where they have, it's like gosh, I don't even know the dimensions on it, but it's a thinner box and you've got the hole in the middle. And then you kind of have that caged area where you can put your dry sugar. I'm switching over to Hive Alive. Hive Alive has been generous and they've given me some fondant to put on my colonies. So the Vivaldi boards I necessarily do not need. So I don't know whether I'm going to build some other type of box that I just have, that circle in it so that I can throw my fondant in it. But that's going to be it. I think I have everything ironed out. The only real question I have for myself now is, am I going to spend the time and wrap them all? I just anymore. I'm thinking. I know, like Greg's reaction. I just think I'm wasting my time doing that. So,
What about an upper entrance, Brian? Are you going to keep one of
I
those
have an
windows
upper
open on your
entrance.
Apame?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Appa man, that's a really good question there. I've never run them. So I probably will throw that upper entrance. I'll probably put one of them open. Like on my Vivaldis, they have that notch, so they all have an upper entrance, and they use it. It's just every single one of my colonies. If you go on those warm days, every single colony across the board, they will all be using the upper entrance. So I probably will open up one of those. We'll see. Now I don't know what they've done on yours, but mine, those little buggers have propylized up a good number of those entrances. So
Yeah, as long as I keep mine down here in the south, I think with the changes in temperature so much, we do have some moisture issues. Maybe you have them everywhere. I don't know what the temperature changes, but I think it's a good idea to have some ventilation in those colonies. So when that warm air rises, it has a place to go. I know I'm pretty sure now. I haven't really talked to Tim Ives recently, but some of those he overwinters his, I think in 3 deeps actually typically, or whatever,
Wow.
2 to 3 deeps.
Wow.
but he always has an upper entrance. He always has a little upper entrance in the top, and I think it's critical. He's in Indiana, where it gets bitter. Wherever he is, he's up. Where it's just brutal cold wherever he's at, and so I don't know much about northern beekeeping. But Greg, do you run any type of installation on your colonies? Do you put any kind of wraps on them?
Well, no.
I just don't know that they're necessary.
It's
honestly.
not, and I don't say that because I'm not speaking disparagingly against those that do it. I think there's a time and place for everything, and I think when even outside of scale and context, do all those things work? Does an insulating your lid, does wrapping your colony, creating a windbreak, doing all these things, does it work, and does it increase your percentages of winter survivability? I think yes, but in my experience, yes is a caveat to is hinging on the health of the colony. And so if the health of our colony is kind of iffy, or it's on the fence, then a lot of those things that we see that we do and then our colonies make it, it's really easy to automatically confirm the bias that we have of the method that we've employed because the bees have made it. And then so we go back and look at, okay, well, what was that colony configuration? Okay, that has to be the reason why they made it. And I don't think that it's quite that cut and dry. So those things do help, but I think they buffer what's going on inside of the colony. So for us, our main strategy is to keep those colonies squeaky clean, and to get them into the size configuration that we feel is not only appropriate for the colony to have what they need going through the winter, but that when they come out of the winter going into the spring, they're just at this certain size that when things kick off, boom, they go. And so for us, it was challenging for us figuring out how big of a hive is too big, what components of all the wintering strategy is necessary. When and everyone's going to be at a little different place, and just because I don't do it or Bruce or Brian doesn't make the validity of either of those things less or more.
If you go way back in my very early on beekeeping journey, I didn't know I didn't know much of anything. I had bees in a box. I thought I was managing them, but they were managing me.
Yeah.
And I was reacting to what I saw a lot of people putting pictures and this and that. And I really didn't know the science behind it. I didn't know where they were at. I was just seeing these things and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to go out and get roofing paper. And then I'm out there stapling it on my hives. And, then I saw people with the 2-inch foam and all that. I'm like, oh my God, that roofing paper, that doesn't work anymore. I got to go get foam. So I was reacting to pictures from people.
Right.
And now, having those strong colonies, taking care of the mites, having those good genetics in there. I mean, you guys have seen the brood patterns.
Yep. It's a big deal.
I think that's pretty much going to take care
Brian,
of my
Brian, it would be interesting to maybe just try, if you have the materials, maybe try insulating a few and try not insulating some and just see if you notice a difference.
Yeah.
And I think the Apame and the what's the polyhive, those probably have a lot of insulation characteristics built in, but the standard wooden colonies, I don't know if you want to do that, but that'd be kind of cool to see, and you could kind of follow that through the winter and see how they do.
Yeah. The Apame I know has a different R value. I don't know what the R value is of it. I know my polyhive, I don't have that one in use right now. Just, that one went to a laying worker and I shook the colony out.
Sure.
That colony is compared to, if you looked at my 2 others that I had last year in the winter, I only had 3 last year. That colony had the highest population. It just was gangbusters. So, now was that truly because it was in a poly hive, or was it just because that queen in that colony went gangbusters?
That's
I
true.
don't know. It was just one season. So,
It's hard to you get. I was just talking to somebody today, or not today, this week, Chad, a buddy of mine locally, and we cut through some rabbit holes, and there was so many just things that I would love to just blast out there today, but we're already getting late. There's if you're not familiar, and I can't even think of the name of the curve. Is it the Dunning-Kruger curve? It's in every mode of education, and it's very prevalent within beekeeping. I feel like I can talk about this and I can pick on it a little bit because I'm guilty as charged, because I was there, I did it. And that is, as you are going down your beekeeping journey and you're first starting off, you lift off, you are empowered, you are passionate, you are on top of the mountain, you are knocking on doors, you are telling everybody the good news, and you want everyone to think and feel and believe just like you do when it comes to raising bees. And this is the right way to do it. And you can't believe the rest of the world hasn't figured it out, because you must be so smart. You already figured it out. You have all the answers. And you might get lucky. In the first year, they might live. Second year, maybe. But it seems like when you hit that third year or that fourth year, all of a sudden you're laying down on the valley, just covered in your own mire and misery. And then you realize, man, I really don't know all the things that I thought I knew about beekeeping. And then you are slowly climbing out of that valley the rest of your entire beekeeping career. But the thing about it, it's not just beekeeping. It's with any modality or method or thing that you're learning as a human. That's our mental process. We need that empowerment. We need that passion. We need that just that exuberance when we first get started, because that's what kicks things off. Then at some point, you have to learn to process learning and education, and learn, know yourself as you are figuring all these things out. So reason I say that, there's a lot of things that we do as we're getting started that it's hard to detach from, because if our bees made it in year 3 or year 4 or year 5 doing all these things that we did, we have an automatic mechanism in our brain that looks to things that worked for survival. And so in our mind, we're associating, well, the bees survived, they did this, we did these things, they lived, those things must be right. And I'm still guilty of it now. There's a couple things that I still do that I want to believe that they work, or that they do work, and they're influencing the overwintering success percentage by X amount. And one of those things, whether it's a 5 or an 8 or a 10 frame box, is we will build just a little 2.5-inch shim on top, and we'll take it and we'll put it on the saw and put a little cross cut in the front, a cross cut in the back, just to make a little 1/8 inch by 6-inch slot on the front and the back of this little box. We'll screen that off for ventilation, and then we can put some dry sugar inside the colony to absorb excess moisture like a desiccant. Sometimes the bees get in there and they do stuff with it. Sometimes they poop all over it. Sometimes they drag it through the colony and out the front and make a mess. I don't know exactly what they're doing with the sugar. I'm going to think that when it gets wet, they're utilizing it. It's definitely like a desiccant. But I think what the little silver lining is ventilation, having a little extra ventilation in that colony so that hot, warm air does have a place to kind of leave. If I'm speaking out of turn, somebody correct me, because I kind of have a habit of doing that. And I don't mean anything by it, but I used to think that the colony generates heat and they're warming up the entire colony. And we have a problem in our human thinking of anthropomorphizing when it comes to animals. There it is right there. Dunning-Kruger effect. That is a real thing, man. So I got sidetracked with the Dunning-Kruger. I used to think that the bees actually warmed up the entire colony. And so in my mind, we need a big, robust colony. It needs to be in triples. Let's go ahead and insulate it. Let's wrap it, and let's put black tar paper on there, because we're making more heat, and more heat is more good. And that's just going to be awesome. Well, it wasn't really until I used a piece of technology in the middle of the wintertime called a FLIR camera. And I was actually looking at the thermal print of the colony. And in this comparison, I put all of these NUCS side by side, even some 8 framers, all side by side, pushed them all together. And in my mind, if they're all generating heat and warming up their boxes, they're all going to kind of gravitate and share the inside side walls all the way down, and this, that, and the other thing. And then when I looked at it, you know what I seen? None of that. Every colony was in the center of its own box, and they were away from all the holes. I used to cut 1 inch or 3/4 to 1 inch holes in the front of the box and the back of the box. I would screen the back of the box and then put an entrance dial on the front. And every single box had all that ventilation. Well, year after year, I didn't really, how can you know what the bees are going to do with it other than trying to propolize it? Well, with the FLIR camera, what I seen is the bees would actually cluster away from that back vent, and they would cluster in the center of the colony. They weren't using shared sidewalls. And I got to thinking, it sort of looks like the bees aren't warming up their own space as a whole, and that's wet. That was too much ventilation for them. So it made me kind of rethink all the things that I thought. So I got rid of the holes, to stop doing that, and I stopped putting the hives all together and started focusing on their overall health, and they actually started living. Boxes as small as a 5-frame single medium were now getting through the wintertime on their own place in a stand with wind all the way around them. And I started thinking, how is that even possible? Meanwhile, you've got certain colonies that are so big, they are generating too much heat. They are breaking cluster too soon. They're going and feeding and going through their food resources, burning that up, and now they've got nothing else to eat. Now you start having colonies that are actually dying from starvation. So all that to say, it's important to figure out what size configuration of colony and bee space you need in your area for your weather. But here's the trick. As soon as you think you figure that out, the winter changes. And then you're forced to go through and sort through all that information again. But what's the one thing that we can't control the weather. We can control how we maintain our hives, though. We can do mite washes. We can make sure they are healthy as they possibly can be so that they can withstand those storms through the winter, more so than all the things that we're putting in place to try to get through the wintertime. So that's what we started doing, and the bees started making it through. And that was kind of a big deal. Believe it or not, a package of bees with a Georgia queen can overwinter and see -5 in Ohio perfectly. As long as they are virus free. But you take the most northern Saskatchewan queen, and if that colony is sick, and if she is sick, they will fall flat on their face even if the winter doesn't get below 40. The viral loads are the biggest thing in the world, and I could preach on that all night long.
Yeah.
You
know, it's the hive life. You know, Cayman has kind of narrowed it down. I think we all talk about all the time: great queens, dead mites, proper nutrition. And that's really what it boils down to. And that's what I think the balance that we're all trying to find in what we're doing. And just to be honest, in my situation, I get behind, and that's the reason. I've got to figure out how to be more efficient and be able to do a better job of, I understand the principles, but I don't always get it done. And I think that's part of the art of beekeeping, so to speak. I've got, my friend Tyler, my friend Davis. Tyler has about 1,000 colonies. He works full time, and he just hits it and he gets it done. But he's super efficient. Davis is very efficient as well. He has about 400 or 500 colonies. But me, with my 130 to 150 colonies, have a hard time. I like what Gus says there.
I do too.
Because that's true. That's so true. How much you can go, you can learn, you can come to these live chats, you can go to conferences, you can read books, but you just got to go in there and you got to try things. You got to observe what the bees are doing and then try different things. That's what I've done. That's how I've learned. Even when we had that chat that night with Gus on here and he talked about the flyback split, I'd never heard of that before, but I went and tried it. And it worked. It worked perfectly. Just like you said, it's kind of a variation on the walkaway split, and it worked great. And so always looking for ways to just observe the bees and try new things. And if you'll do that and not be so set in that little box of, I have to do it the way the book said to do it, or the way my mentor said to do it, or the way Greg said to do it, or Brian, or it just you take those. What I do is I take the ideas from different people. I try to think about it in my mind and say, hey, will that work? And then I just try it. Sometimes it works, sometimes I fall flat, but overall, gradually, that learning curve, you kind of continue to learn and you get better. And I didn't see that. What was that last comment you put up there from?
Shout out. There was a shout out to
Oh,
Ken
yeah.
Lebowitz. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ken's a good dude. He's active with Hives for Heroes there in Alabama. So that's appreciate what you're doing there.
Andalusia
Ken, thanks.
is probably an hour and a half west of here. It's a nice little town. And I invited Ken. He couldn't make it over that night when we had dinner. We broke bread that night over here when you guys visited, Greg, but he just couldn't make it. He was going to try to make it. He couldn't make it.
Oh, man, that'd have been great to see him. Yeah.
But it's not too far from here. It's definitely a nice little drive away from here, but it is doable. And Andalusia's a nice little town over there.
Well, there's a mode of thinking that I know Ken would very likely appreciate, and it's extremely relevant to what we're talking. Maybe we'll close on this. As we're developing our plans and our strategy, not only to make sure that the fall is successful, but we're doing it in a way so that these bees are squared away and they are where they need to be for the winter time. The goal, obviously, is to have bees make it through the winter. But do you want them to just barely limp through and just make it, or do you want them to thrive coming out of the spring?
Mm-hmm.
Those colonies that are thriving when they come out of the spring are some of the most greatest assets that until you know the difference, it's really hard to explain that. But if you can put, the comment there about the thinking chair, I can't tell you how many times there was one thinking session that I can specifically remember, and I'm sitting in this chair. And it's here at the old yard years ago, and I'm trying to I hear this mentor saying this and that person saying this and this about winter, and you need to do all these things and da 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 da, and I never got around to doing all those things. I didn't build the quilt boxes, I never got the black paper, I never got the insulation and the foam, I never did this, and I'm sitting there and I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, what can I do to make all this right, to give the bees what they need? And I just heard, there's nothing you're going to do now to make up for what you didn't do then. You are where you are right here, right now. Now, what are you going to do? And it was in the time of the year. It was so late in the fall, there wasn't anything really to do. So a couple shots of OAV, put them away. That was the year that I did all of that experimenting and did all the clustering, putting the colonies side by side. That's when I broke free of that anthropomorphizing, where if you're warm, they're warm. If they're cold, you're cold. Bring them in. The jokes you hear about the animals and bringing the things in. Yes, bees are livestock. However, we can't anthropomorphize the bee. We can't put on the human feelings and thoughts and emotions and needs that we have. We can't project that onto the bees. And if we do, we find ourselves in this ongoing mental loop that we can't break from, because we're trying to treat the bees like we want to be treated with the things that we need as an animal to survive. Once I separated that and I had all that information right in front of me, and I seen Georgia Queens -5 cruised right through because they were clean and free of disease, and I saw clustering didn't do anything for me in my context, and that the bees weren't heating up the hive, they were heating up the cluster, and they didn't need all these other things. And I had a breakthrough mentally to where I started to take responsibility for these bees. I took responsibility for bringing these animals, this livestock into my management. I took responsibility for their health and their outcome and their life and their quality of life. And when I did that, and I detached myself from the situation to where now I'm looking at the situation like I'm looking at myself in the situation and everything surrounding it. Now I can look at the facts. I can look at the outcomes. I can chart the course and the path to go from A to B when you're looking down at the map rather than being stuck right in it and you can't see anything around you. That's a big deal. I think Ken, intimately is aware of detaching in those situations for that situational awareness, to look around, see what's going on, make a call, have that effective communication, whether that's with yourself or on a piece of paper or whoever you're working with. That's a big deal when we're working with bees, because a lot of us, and I'm guilty, I did it for a long time. I wanted everybody else to figure out the beekeeping for me. And all I wanted to do was just copycat or mimic or just do all those things because they sound good, they made me feel good, it sounded right. This person looks like looks like they're successful, it looks like this, but for some reason all these things aren't working. It wasn't until I took responsibility for of them dying and all the actions before everything changed. Now we start focusing on health of the colony, quality queens, feeding, really getting on top of feeding. Now all of a sudden everything's growing, everything's healthy. And then there's a million other hard lessons learned, and we talk about that in some presentations. But if there's any takeaways from here, folks, it's try to think about detaching from that situation to look, where am I right now with these bees, and where do they need to go? Simply start there, and I think you will find a lot of success and the very simple things to get you from point A to point B. Brian, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, and there's in my work, there's a phrase that we use, and it's just in relation to something with healthcare documentation, but the cookie cutter strategy is not to your benefit. And that's right here, and I was guilty of it. I tried, I just, I saw stuff on here and I was cookie cutter. I'm just trying to, if it worked for, they did it, so it's got to work here for me. Context is key.
I think we could spend 18 more hours digging into some of these ways to the mindset and the philosophical approach, because you can't escape it. It is tied into every action and thought and deed that we do. And so with the bees are complicated. I mean, they're simple, but they're simply complicated. And a lot of times we're tripping over ourselves trying to do what's right by the bees, and until we kind of figure that out. So
yeah,
I I totally agree with that. And I'm going to make a quick analogy here. I really like sports, and the coaches, the teams that are the most successful are those that can adapt to different environmental changes on the playing field, whether it be football or whatever sport it is.
Halftime adjustments.
Likewise in beekeeping, I believe. Ted is one of the most. He's probably one of the most knowledgeable beekeepers in the state of Alabama. He's a friend of mine. You'll see him sometimes comment on my Facebook page or whatever, but he's been doing it for about 50 years. So he started when he was, I think he said 13 years old. And, back then there weren't a lot of the same issues that they have now, really very few of the same issues. It was different back then, different problems. And he went through every phase, every wave of disease that has come through, from probably the AFB stuff to the tracheal mites to the introduction of the varroa mites and the hive beetles. And he went through every stage of it and survived and adapted, and he's still a commercial beekeeper to this day here in the state. I look up to him and others like him. And so if you want to be successful, you have to be willing to adapt, to see what's going on, and to learn from others. Yes, learn from videos, learn from books, learn from articles and research. But you have to be willing to adapt. And like Gus said, you have to observe your bees and figure it out and work with your bees instead of against them. Some of the things that are recommended out there are almost working against the bees, I believe, because you just got to adapt to your own situation like we've been talking about. But I really like what you said there, Greg and Brian, both. That was some really good stuff. I had to send you a super sticker for that because that was really, really good.
Well, I appreciate the super stickers from you and Brian. Lisa there at Grammy's Midwife Suburban Homestead, thanks. I know there were some super stickers up there earlier when I was cutting in and out. I'm going to thank you guys for that too. I know we say it. We can't thank you enough for your support via the comments, just the fellowship. That's the bees, like we say, the bees are the conduit to the people, and that is the greatest reward, is just being a part of everyone's life, seeing what we're all doing there, being there to support each other. I think what I really appreciate is this movement, this approach to beekeeping, because number one, it's non-judgmental. Number two, we all understand and appreciate that there is more than one way to pluck the chicken. It's knowing how you're going to eat it dictates what you do from there. That's a big deal. We are all open-minded to entertain thoughts and ideas, and that's huge. We're all in this thing not to just see whose bees make it and whose bees don't. We're not in this to posture and project and to say, this way is better. No, that folks, we talk about all different kind of ideas. Everything from treatment-free to treating with off-label stuff. You do you. It's about you and your bees and that walk that you have with them. And we're here to just support you, to support the community, just to share some thoughts, share some ideas, but most importantly, just to support each other as we all walk our own path. And that's a big deal. Ken, I saw that super chat. I want to thank you for that too. I'm looking forward to meeting a lot of you face to face as time goes on. I know we're going to see a lot of you at Hive Life coming up here in January. I know we're going to have a big booth. Bruce and Brian, there's going to be a lot of us hanging out around there. We're going to set up the collaboration corner again, but it's going to be bigger. It'll be right there with the Nature's Image Farm booth. We're going to intentionally set up a place for content creators to just come, hang out, fellowship, cop a squat, shoot some video. This is the corner where you're going to find. This is where you're going to find everybody is going to be hanging here, having a good time, shooting collab videos. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll have our booth set up, selling some things too. We'll have bucket feeders, some wax-tipped hive kits. We'll have some NUCS and queens, maybe packages that we'll be pre-selling them too. The main focus is the people, and I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody there. Just like Jason Crook at Bohemia Bees, putting on that BBQ with everybody showing up. That's cool. That's what it's about, is just that community aspect, that fellowship. Hive Life is going to be so fun. I'm looking forward to that. Outside of that, do you guys have anything else kind of up and coming? I know, Bruce, you've got your website. How's that working out for you?
We sold a little bit at first and it slowed down. I need to make some adjustments maybe on some things, but if you want some South Alabama honey, I've had people that have reached out to me in the past, said, can I ship? And I've been willing to do that, but now it's way easier. And anything over $50 is free shipping. And I'm just going to give a shout out to Rob from Laura Bees. He helped me get it set up. And if you want to try some of this South Alabama honey, order some on there and we'll see if we can get it out to you real quickly. But that's my main thing as far as the honey goes. I've got to get this honey moved also. Just trying to stay ahead of these bees a little bit and get through winter. That's my focus now, and trying to stay on top of the videos a little bit. And it's actually slowing down a little bit for a lot of things right now, but it's much needed. I'm tired and a little bit burnt out, and I need a little bit of a break. And so we talked about earlier what I'm doing right now, just kind of checking, peeking in. But as far as that goes, that's what I'm just looking forward to Hive Life. Ken earlier asked if I was going to the ABA, the Alabama Beekeeper Association conference this weekend. I'm not. I'm just going to, right now I'm focusing on Hive Life. I know a lot of folks travel around to different conferences, but that's the one I'm kind of got my focus on. I should go to the Alabama one, but I'm just going to pass on that this week. I need to go next year. Possibly I will, but for now that's where my focus is. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, I assume we're going to do this again next week on my channel, and haven't decided exactly what we're going to do. Maybe we'll just do it like this, just the three of us, or maybe we'll see if we can have some guests in, but we're going to make sure we try to keep this going. It's been fun, and we appreciate everyone for being on here.
Sounds good. Brian?
I'm looking forward to getting into my colonies. I've been in them once in the last almost month. So,
hey, Greg, could I say real quick, Brian, I hate to cut you off here, but
that's all right.
I get so worried about trying to manage 100 plus colonies, 130, whatever I've got colonies, that sometimes I lose the joy a little bit in that, because I'm just trying to catch up. I get behind, I'm working so hard, and I literally get really burned out. But I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I was feeling, that was when I was probably at my lowest this fall I've been at. Just, man, I just cannot even do this anymore. And I wanted to go out and look at my FMA hives in the backyard right here in my house. You've been there, Greg, you've seen them. And I'm like, man, I've got to check them. I did some mite washes on them. And my wife just basically said, kind of just encouraged me to go through those colonies. And so I did. I went through and I took my time, I wasn't in a hurry. I just went back and enjoyed going through the bees like I used to do it. And man, that was a tremendous experience. The bees looked good. You know, the washes were good, but I didn't have to feel like I was just, oh, I've got to hurry up so I can get to the next one. And so sometimes just slow down a little bit, I would say, and just enjoy the bees, you know. And that really kind of helped me to kind of say, hey, I really still love this. It's awesome. And these little bugs in a box are incredibly amazing. They're miraculous what they can do. And that was a good experience for me. I needed that. And so it helped me kind of look forward to get a little bit excited about it again and get through that little low I was in there for a little while. So that was good.
Good to hear.
Sorry, Brian.
Oh, it's okay. On that note, though, do you guys want to wrap it up?
Yep, those are good thoughts, Bruce. I think we're all guilty of sometimes not maybe not that we all have to be open about that, but sometimes we're not honest with ourselves when we're going through all those things and we're digging in and we're pressing on because we feel like we have to do and we have to perform, we have to grow, we have to do all these things. But there's something to be said about maintaining that relationship with those bugs in a box to where it is where joy and happiness is the consequence of beekeeping rather than growing your beekeeping to find joy and happiness. Because if you're growing your beekeeping to find joy and happiness, chances are you're not going to find it then if you can't find it right now. And I like what you said there, Bruce. It's a good reminder to just slow down and get back to what's important with you in that relationship. So I appreciate you sharing that. Just the last thing I'm going to add here, it looks like our buddy Roy Adams now looks like switched to he is officially Adams Outdoors. So if you want to learn more about who Roy Adams is, we've got a few videos out now where we're kind of, I'm going to say showing off or showcasing Roy Adams. He's a great dude here locally in Ohio. If you want to find out why his wife thinks he has a death wish, then check out that video, Roy Adams, the Death Wish Beekeeper, and you'll understand why. It's been a lot of fun with Roy all year long. The last video we just put out today, Roy helped me go through every colony there in the learning yard to just get the situation, see what is what. If you haven't seen that yet, if you're familiar with the story in the storm, you got to see this video or you won't believe it if I tell you the outcome. So check out the video we just put out today. Other than that, I want to thank everybody. Fuzzy World was the last one. I want to thank you guys again for all the financial support, the comments, all the thoughts and prayers for not only us for the storms that we go through, but also the folks that's in our community. Just want to real quick also shout out Stan Gore is in here, Texas Friendly Beekeepers. Stan, thanks for everything that you do for not only the state of Texas, your Facebook group, but also with Hives for Heroes. Appreciate you. Ricky Rorick's in here too. Ricky just jumped in. It's good seeing you here recently. I think on this last note, the last thing I'm going to add to this whole thing is sometimes you'll hear that little voice or you'll have that little tug on your heart and you're not sure what that means. Just do it. Follow through with it. Because by doing that, I ended up climbing up a mountain to go pick up a horizontal hive that I had no idea how it would fit into my context. I picked it up, drove through a snowstorm off the mountain, brought this thing home, still not having any idea what it was for. And it turns out that just following that one calling again has led to one thing after another, where being the lighthouse in so many ways is now so apparent. I'm going to thank Ricky and his wife Ruth for that horizontal hive that has blessed us in so many ways, and so many folks too. And for more on that story, check out all the hashtag Be the Lighthouse videos and posts and comments, and I think you'll understand a little bit more on that. Again, thanks everybody for watching. Bruce and Brian, I'm going to thank you guys for religiously just about every Wednesday for going on all this time, showing up and putting the work in, not only for the three of us, but more importantly, for all of our folks here who are hanging out and watching, a part of this whole entire community. I want to thank you guys too. As always, I want to remind you guys to be the lighthouse and be the change that you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time. Hit it, Brian.